Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. And I am really pleased here to introduce our guest. Actually, Glenn Schultz brought this about. Glenn is up in Boulder and interacts with Youngevity people all the time. But because of Glenn Schultz's efforts, we have Dr. Glen Winkle here today. And I know many of you have been asking about the i26 and how that boosts immune system function, how it may or may not be good for your microbiome, and how it can support your health in general. And I thought, rather than trying to explain it myself, let's go straight to the horse's mouth. So Dr. Glen Winkle has been involved with this product. You were part of the research team that developed it, right?
Not the development team. I work with Dr. Greenblatt, but I did some projects with Legacy back in the day, most on the sports side, yeah. So on that side, I was familiar with it. But as being a scientist, you cover everything when you look at it. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved. And
well, like anyone in this industry, in fact, got a phone call one day from a friend of mine who was in network marketing, and he was trying to sell me on a new product. And I'm, of course, like, yeah, this happens a lot to me. You can imagine. So the whole point was that I was like, well, yeah, it sounds too good to be true, which it really did. When you start talking about this product, it sounds like snake oil. It covers so many bases. And so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And about, maybe the next day, I think it was, I got a phone call from Dr. Helen Greenblatt. And Dr. Helen has worked on the science team, and she was part of that research group itself. And being a scientist, she felt it was important that a scientist speaks to a scientist versus a layperson speaking to a scientist, which made sense. So as a courtesy, I called her back. We chatted for about an hour about the i26, and obviously knowing her background and knowing she's a fellow scientist, I was intrigued. I said, this sounds interesting. Let's look into this. And of course, I got some product. It was sent to me in the mail. I got on the program, and I suffered from chronic sinus infections despite what I was doing. And one day I walked out to the UPS truck to get a delivery, and I was like, I'm in San Francisco. I can smell flowers. I couldn't smell flowers before. And I was like, wow, that really helped my sinuses. And it was the beginning, but the really big one, a good friend of mine, his son had leukemia, and the results in his program were just phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it before, and that's what really sold me, was what it did to the immune system back then. That was 20 years ago.
Okay, so you've been taking the product for 20 years, is that correct?
Yeah, I've lost track, but it's been at least 20 years. It's the kind of product that once you get on, you realize the benefit. There's no reason in the world ever to get off it, and there's no reason, I've done everything I possibly can to the point where I can make the product if I have to, if something happened to the company, because I want to make sure I never have this product available. It's a very simple product to make, technically speaking, for a scientist, but not for the individual. Yeah,
okay.
But it's a very, very powerful product, and what it represents is something completely different from the world of supplements. It really comes into the category of a nutraceutical more than anything else.
I find that that story you told me about how there's some cultures still today that kind of use the very basic principle on how this product is made. Will you share that with us?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mennonites, for example. Let me go back a bit, because it may not be totally obvious what we're actually talking about. But the idea is that let's say that you have a family and they have chickens. They raise chickens and they eat the eggs. Okay. So basically, that's one of the food sources. In fact, I raise ducks and I eat the duck eggs. That's my little thing for my eggs. So the idea being that, how can you protect yourself? Let's say someone in the family gets a cold. Okay, so you have them go out and they take care of the chickens and spend a lot of time with the chickens. Let's say cough on the chickens, for example. Well, the chickens are exposed to whatever that human virus is, or human bacteria, whatever it is, and the chickens will never get sick with this. It's not a chicken bacteria, it's a human bacteria. But the chickens are exposed to it, and their immune system mounts a response. And inside the egg are some of those essentially antibodies against that pathogen. And when the family eats the eggs, that family is protected from that pathogen. But I have to get the storyline behind that story of how the product's made and what it is to understand the technology involved, because I've kind of jumped way ahead of myself. So you want me to cover that technology first? Because that's
however you need to do it.
Okay. The technology is called hyperimmune technology. Now, let me step back a little bit, and it sounds really technical, and let me make it really very, very, very simple. And this is the way I explain to people, because it's the easiest way to understand this product. And let me go back to a mother and a child, a newborn, for example. When that mother breastfeeds a child, especially the very first mother's breast milk, is a very thick, waxy, protein-rich substance called colostrum. And most mothers know this stuff. It's a very funky kind of a milk. It's full of antibodies and other factors which supports the child's immune system. In fact, children that aren't breastfed miss that colostrum, and their immune systems are never at the same functioning level as an immune system had been exposed to colostrum. That's why breastfed babies are healthier than non-breastfed babies. And this goes way up into adulthood. So the idea is that what's happening is that when the mother has the child, before the child is born, the immune system cells go up to the breast and basically start releasing these factors into the air where the mother's breast milk is made, so that the child will get that stuff for the mother's breast milk. That technology, that term, is called the passive transfer of immunity. We talked about vaccines a minute ago, and the idea being that if you're exposed to a virus, you're actively exposed to the virus, you develop an immunity. In this case, the mother's been exposed to, let's say, some pathogen, her immune system mounts a response, and then through the mother's breast milk, passively transfers the immunity to the child. So that's the passive transfer of immunity. So basically, that's the technology, and how it works in mammals. Not really technology, it's how nature works, right? Now the trick is that chickens don't breastfeed. So get that picture in your head. People always laugh and smile. They go, yeah, that's right. But they have the same thing going on, the same passive transfer immunity, except that a chicken lays an egg. Inside that egg are the same exact ingredients essentially as in mother's breast milk, except since a chicken only gets one egg, that egg contains between 10 and 20-fold concentration of these antibodies and immune factors. And so technically, if you eat the egg of a chicken, you get all these immune antibodies, but they're specific for chickens. So it doesn't benefit us at all to eat regular eggs besides the protein and the value of the egg. Now, in the case of hyperimmunity, what we've done, we've specifically exposed the chicken, in this case, is called immune 26 or I26, to 26 different pathogens that live in our GI tract. Not just anywhere else, but just in the GI tract. Salmonella, Klebsiella, things of that sort. In fact, C. diff is in there. So the idea being that there's 29 pathogens the chicken's exposed to, and it mounts an immune response. It never gets sick, but it mounts an immune response. And then antibodies against those pathogens are now inside the egg. When we eat those eggs, those antibodies essentially go in and kill all the bad pathogens inside the GI tract. That's how the technology was developed. That's the hyperimmunity aspect of it. So essentially, what we've done is we've exposed chickens to specific pathogens that we know are bad for us, so that when we eat those eggs contain antibodies against those pathogens, and that takes care of the GI tract. That's the technology in a nutshell. So what the Mennonites were doing was essentially, they were coughing on the chickens, essentially. The chickens are exposed to the pathogens, mount an immune response, and the eggs contain various traces of these antibodies, which protects the rest of the family against whatever the child had. That's how it works. A much more gross way, not as effective, obviously, and only for the pathogens that they're exposed to. And so what we've done, we standardized it, and we call it I26. That's all it is. Simple, but very complex too at the same time.
So, the first time I heard about this product, I thought about a paper I read in graduate school. We had been, there was a group in our lab that was raising antibodies to detect proteins they were trying to isolate. And of course, they'd do it by injecting their protein into a rabbit. And then you bleed the rabbit's ear and you collect the blood and you purify the antibodies from that. And this paper had come out talking about how chicken eggs were much more effective. It was easier to purify the protein out of the egg and this kind of thing. And I remember, of course, I've never had to purify a protein, but I remember thinking, yeah, that's the way I'm going to do it. And
much greater yield too. And think about eggs, easy to harvest, and harvesting blood. There's a lot of protein in that egg, and you pull those proteins out, and you get a huge amount of the protein in a very short space.
So I guess a question I have is, what keeps this protein intact? What keeps the antibodies intact as they go through your digestive system? How do they remain effective?
Well, you have to look at the IgY antibody. The antibodies that are in the yolk, called IgY for yolk, these antibodies are very, very similar to secretory IgA. So secretory IgA antibodies have a lot of crosslinks in them, which protects them from the acids and the acids and the enzymes in the GI tract. So if you have an IgY, now we don't know why this is, that's just the way it is, but the yolk antibodies can get into our system, they're not digested, and they're well tolerated, and they go through the stomach and the intestines, and they're still intact. Now there is one caveat, because it's very, very important to understand. These are proteins, and proteins have a certain conformation. That conformation is what determines its specificity. So it's a certain shape, and it binds to a certain active site in the protein. Complex physiology, but nonetheless. The idea is that these proteins are held in place by different crosslinks. if you heat the protein, the cross-links break, it loses conformation, and it doesn't work anymore. I've had people put their I26 in their coffee in the morning, and they said it doesn't work, and I kind of go, it can't work. You cannot heat it, and you can't cook it. So I'll never forget this because at one of the conventions, we were having dessert. It was about 7 o'clock at night, and the president of the company, Jeff Pearsall, gets on the stage, and he says, well, how do you guys like the coffee mousse? You know, the coffee mousse dessert. It was delicious. And he says, you've all just received one serving of our product. I was like, oh my gosh, no way, couldn't tell. Because it was egg, but it wasn't heated in the mousse. And we're having this dessert, and that's what the product was. So you can disguise it in foods as long as you don't heat the food. You can't cook it.
Okay.
That's a good point, though. Very good point.
Okay. And so the people raising chickens who have their backyard chickens, if you're cooking the eggs, you're not getting the antibody effect.
That's correct. That's correct.
So what do the Mennonites do that you say develop this practice? Are they eating the raw eggs or?
I don't know exactly. I believe they do cook them. I mean, you lose activity. For example, the I26 has to be pasteurized. Otherwise, there's a risk of salmonella. So there's a light pasteurization process. I do know from the research that if you don't pasteurize it, it's much more effective. It may be multifold. So there is some denaturing taking place in the pasteurization. It's like a flash pasteurization process. So it's not like a huge 20-minute long baking. It's like a light pasteurization to protect you from salmonella and other kind of bacteria that might be in the present product. So we know that's not there now because we test. So. Okay.
And I've seen on the website, you've got there are all kinds of recipes available for making things with the.
That's right.
Is that, what happens when you start mixing it with sugars, with all these things that help it taste good?
Well, you just said a trigger word for me, which is sugar. That's a whole other subject. Sugar. I have come to the realization over the last couple of years that sugar is probably one of the worst things that we've ever put into our diet. End of story. I mean, period. I have gone completely off sugar, and it's phenomenal now. I have no more cravings, no more addictions. My body, everything runs much better as a result. But and don't get me started. But anyway, so I try to. Yeah, here's the thing. It's important to understand the egg powder by itself tastes better when there's sugar present. That makes sense? When you sweeten it somewhat. For example, if you mix the egg, just the powdered egg, in water, it tastes like a watered down egg, which is what it is basically. So I always tell people to mix in something fairly sweet. I'll put it in orange juice, for example. Now I put it in BTT instead. So, because it's much lower in sugar content, so that's better. So, and I don't eat a lot of fruit juices anymore. I used to drink orange juice every day, my 26. Now I use BTT, cardio beets, and a combination of some other things to make it more flavorful. So, but no more orange juice. It's not in my diet anymore. Too much sugar.
So what kind of research is supporting the I26 product line?
Gosh, there's a lot of research out there. There's two avenues of research. You must understand there's two things going on here, because DuPont originally developed the product and they were attempting to make a pharmaceutical. The problem was that when you have a product that covers so many areas of human health, from cardiovascular over to neuromuscular, over to neurological, over to endocrinological, over to, just general, feeling good kind of stuff. How do you define that product category into a place where you can make an actual pharmaceutical? And that was one of the problems that DuPont struggled with before they shelved the project. Now, had the science team who recognized the value of the product not said, this product has to get to market before versus sitting on a shelf in DuPont's little array someplace, and they brought it to market as the I26. So it has a wide range of effectiveness because of it's very diverse. So what was the question again?
So what's the research behind it? What research has been done?
Well, I said there's two avenues. Okay, so one avenue is on the immune system side, and the other avenue is on the GI side. And let me explain how that works, because they're separate, but they're together. So I'm going to come in from the side I came in from. Actually, no, let me flip it around. Let me come from the side where the approach right now. So we know that I26 was developed against 26 to 29 different intestinal pathogens. Okay, let's talk about that just for a second, because you know how important the microbiome is, right? The problem is that the science world does not know to this date what a normal microbiome is. Very important to understand, because we see in Malawi, you see one type of microbiome. In South America, another type of microbiome. In the US, another type, different microbes in the GI tract of different people all over the world, depending on what they eat in their diet. The diet seems to be the indicator. So our high sugar, high fat diet gives you a different microbiome than, say, someone eating vegetarian or nuts and fruits someplace else. So we don't know what normal is. But we do know there's certain pathogens don't belong there. And that's what DuPont said. These 26 pathogens, we don't want them in it. If we have them in there, you get sick. Like my neighbor across the street had C. diff, C. difficile, which is a very bad pathogen, obviously. And we had to go into his lab. We had to wear gloves and the whole thing, the gallon, the whole bit, because it's very contagious. So, and it doesn't respond well to antibiotics. Well, I know that there is antibodies against C. diff in the I26. So if you have, in fact, Jeff had C. diff, got on the I26, we got rid of it within about 2 weeks, which is pretty good. It didn't persist, which is nice. So we know that it works against intestinal pathogens. Now, the thing is that right now, everyone's talking about the microbiome and eating yogurt and stuff like that, and whether it be kimchi or cabbage, things that have bacteria in them. And that's basically adding good bacteria to your GI tract to support it. But the problem is that if you have some pathogens that are well entrenched and it's essentially lodged in little cavities inside the GI tract, they're not coming out because you add more good guys. So the I26 goes in, it takes out the bad pathogens, allowing you to restore the colony back to normal, and then you can add your probiotics and get a much better overall result. So here's the kicker. You think about the immune system, it has to work in two different avenues. One avenue, I call it, is a very dry and arid environment. The other avenue is a very warm, dark, and moist environment. And you know what those two are? One is the skin and the outer surfaces, and then the GI tract is a warm, dark, moist environment where about 3.5 pounds of bacteria live inside your GI tract. It's a lot of bacteria. In fact, I always talk about there's 270 trillion cells in the body. 73 trillion? I forget. 73 trillion cells. But there's 270 or 700 trillion bacteria in the body. 10 times as many cells. They're very, very small, obviously, but there's many of them. And these pathogens can affect everything from your mood, behavior, your immune system, your endocrine system, and everything else. So bad pathogens are not good for your system. So by removing bad pathogens and replacing them, you essentially, the immune system is doing a lot of work and spending about 80% of its energy on GI. So in other words, if you have something else like a cold or a flu or a virus or cancer going on, your immune system is focusing its energy on the GI tract and not worrying about, it has to focus here because that's where the bacterial insult is. Take those bacterial infections away, it can focus energy on something else like cancer or autoimmune disease or allergies or something else. It allows it to function more effectively. So from that perspective, normalizing GI activity now essentially allows the immune system to work more effectively. That's what it really comes down to. If your GI tract is not working well, you aren't working well. So that's the immune side of it. That's how you get from the GI to immune side. There's another aspect of the I26 which a lot of people don't know about because I came in from that side when we learned about the product originally. And that is that when you make these antibodies against different pathogens, you also create other factors. And it's a funny story. I was at, what's the name of the original company? DCV in Maryland. And I met Super Iyer, one of the scientists on the science team. And he's an Indian guy. He's a really fun guy. And I asked him, I go, well, tell me, Super, what's going on with the product? He goes, oh, Glenn, we have a brand new product. A new protein. I'm going like, you discovered a new protein? He goes, oh, yes, a new protein. I'm like going, and I worked at UC San Francisco. We've got these immunology think tanks with like maybe 5 PIs and about 25 postdocs working on projects in immunology, and they haven't discovered this protein. How did you discover this protein? He goes, very simple. We work with chickens. That's the secret. We work with mammals, rats, and mice, and monkeys and things. It doesn't work in mammals. It only works in chickens. We don't know why that is. These two proteins are very, very, very important. We haven't talked about them before in Youngevity because they don't talk about this stuff because it's the other side. What it is that one protein is called cytokine activating factor, and the other is called cytokine inhibiting factor, CAF and CIF. Now, what these do, you have to understand what cytokines are. Well, I'll start with the brain. In the brain, you have neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and these neurotransmitters, what they do, they allow you to signal the thing to work. Well, the endocrine system has hormones, and the hormones talk back and forth. Well, in the immune system, you have cytokine. These are the messengers inside the immune system that basically increase activity, cytokine activating factor, or decrease activity, cytokine inhibiting factor. This is a very important concept because you see, in many situations, your immune system is not functioning well. So essentially, it's subnormal. And so what you want to do, you want to make it more effective. So if you have an activating factor, cytokine activating factor will activate the immune system, bring it to normal, and allow it to fight whatever it may be, whether it be cancer or bacterial infections or viral infections. Now, on the other hand, some people have autoimmune diseases or have allergy problems, and their immune system is overreactive. They have lots of inflammation. You want to turn it down. Well, cytokine inhibiting factor turns the immune system down to a normal level. And here's the fun part. You know that most people, if they want to boost the immune system, they might take echinacea. But if they have MS, it might get worse. If they have a problem where the immune system is overactive, like an autoimmune, they might take prednisone, which has its own set of side effects. But prednisone slows it down. One boosts it up, but nothing until now does both. The i26 can both, at the same time, can increase activity in one compartment and decrease activity in another compartment simultaneously. That's unheard of that any product can do. That can actually normalize the immune system. And back then we talked about normalizing immune function because it's not boosting, because boosting has its own set of side effects. If you have autoimmune disease, you don't want to boost the immune system. If you have an underperforming immune system, you do want to boost the immune system, but you don't want to go into overactivity. And you definitely want to take prednisone. So from that perspective, the idea being that you have a suppressed immune response or an overactive immune response, you can normalize it and find a nice common level where everything works effectively. Now that happened because of a couple of factors, GI activity, along with these cytokine inhibiting and activating factors. And that's what's so cool about this product that I love.
So it's really promoting homeostasis of the immune system.
Well said, homeostasis, exactly.
Okay.
Explaining how it does it is a little bit problematic. The average person kind of goes like, I have no idea what you just said, Glenn, which is okay. I just tell people, okay, get a person on the program, have them see the benefits, because I lead with this product. This is my number one product I lead with. Because, people know about food supplements. Well, I don't eat greens, and so I'll take a greens product. Or I don't get a lot of fruits. I'll take some vitamin C. Or I need to take some more B vitamins. They know those things already, right? Or I have a problem with, antioxidants. I need to take free radicals. I need to take more antioxidants. Then they go, but I eat eggs. So I tell people, but, if you have GI issues and everything else, and now, of course, I've switched my diet completely over to a different type of diet. So now everything else changes too, which is kind of fun. And who knows what my microbiome looks like right now. It may be very different from what it was, say, a year and a half ago. So.
Right. Well, I think the microbiome is constantly changing. I mean,
Indeed it is.
If it's healthy, it's going to adapt to your environment, and that's never a static place.
Yeah.
But how do you work with people who have maybe tried the product and are not getting their results?
This is a very, very important question because obviously you want to get results. And I find that you have to know what your dose is. Okay. So everyone starts on 1 scoop. That's it. Unless they have autoimmune disease, we start on half a scoop. But a person who is just a regular person, 1 scoop. And I'll tell you the average dose, the effective dose between 1 and 2 servings. Some it's more like 1, some it's more towards 2, but it's in that range. 1 serving may give a result, but it might take longer to see the result. So basically, I tell a person, start on 1 scoop. I typically take it in the morning or early afternoon. I don't take it late at night. It does keep me awake if I do. And I go about maybe 3, 4, 5 days. Then I ask the question, what do you notice? There's only 3 responses. I notice nothing. I feel fantastic. I feel like a Mack truck just ran me over. Those are your 3 responses. Now, let me explain what those are, okay? When a person feels nothing, I tell them to double the dose. Start taking 2 scoops a day, and then go another 3 or 4 days. So you want to see the effectiveness of it. When a person feels fantastic, stay exactly where you are on 1 serving. It's working. If a person feels like got run over by a truck, I know what it means that there's a term we use called the Herxheimer reaction. Some call it a helium reaction. It's sort of like that, but it's a little bit different. The idea is that the dose is too high, halve the dose. So the trick is very simple. Nothing, double the dose. They feel fantastic, stay at that dose. If they feel that they're they really tired, I call it feeling malaise. It's like, let me describe the feeling. When you just get the flu and you just feel like, oh God, I feel so tired. What's happening is your immune system is running at a certain level and it sees a virus going on, so it increases activity, temperature goes up, respirate, everything goes up, and that draws energy from the rest of the system. So it's activating the immune system, which is a good thing to fight a virus or bacterial infection, but it does pull energy away and you feel tired and run down. Sometimes your muscles even hurt. So that's what's happening to a person. If it activates at 1 scoop, it may be activating too fast and they're feeling like I'm coming down with the flu, half a dose. And then you go about the same thing, about 4 or 5 days, ask the question, how do I feel? And you keep using that model. If I feel nothing, increase the dose by a scoop. So a person might be on 3 scoops a day. Now my friend Kevin Hodge, goodness gracious, he had a really severe sinus problem. And he had the tubes, he had the surgery, he had all these things, and nothing worked. And I said, very available fun. Let's just be prepared to go this route. Keep going 1 scoop until he gets a result. He went 1 scoop, 2 scoop, 3 scoop. He went to 9 scoops a day. And guess what? He got a result. Then I said, now come down from 9 scoops a day, keep coming down. He went down to like 4 servings a day, and he was fine after that. Then he goes to LA for Christmas one year and forgot to take his product with him, ran out, and his sinus problems came back. He had to go back to 7 servings a day to get it rid of, and back to 4 servings a day. So I see this, you can vary the range somewhat, you know. But basically, the average person between 1 and 2 servings, that's the norm. I've had people as low as 2 capsules, which is 2/9 of a serving. It's a very small dose, but it worked. And I gradually try to work a person to at least, first with a low dose, they might find a result at half a serving. I ask them to go eventually to 1 serving, very gradually up to 1 serving, and they get better results.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help some?
Do you ever see people, can you reach a point where you no longer need to take it?
Okay, I'll tell you I'll tell you from a very personal experience, okay? There are days when I get so busy and I run out the door in the morning, do my product, I come home and I forget about it at night and I go to bed. This happened actually about 3 days ago. I went 2 days without my program. And what happens is really quite funny because I don't even realize it myself. I work till like sometimes 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm in front of my computer. I'm falling asleep in front of my computer. I'm like, God, why am I so tired? I'm like, I have to take my i26. It gives my energy all day long. I have a longer window of energy than I would otherwise. That I really notice on a day-to-day basis. So why would I want to be dead tired at 10 o'clock at night when I could be working until 1 in the morning? That's why I look at it. But basically, yes, I try not to miss a day, but I do, and I see the benefit. I see the results of not taking it. So, like I said, there was a time back in the day when this company was new, and people were making claims about the product. I mean, very strong claims about cancer, about HIV/AIDS, about different diseases. And what was happening, the FDA was sent a notification to the company and said, you can't make those claims because people were getting a little crazy out there. It was such a great product. They were making these wild, bold claims. They can't do that. So I remember the company at one meeting just literally cut off 5 of the top distributors. They said, sorry, you're done, because they made claims. And they were very specific about not making claims, not saying it treats this, it treats that. No, it can't do that. So from that perspective, I've come to the point that I don't make claims. I talk about what it does and how it can help someone. And from that benefit, now I know where I'm going. This happens. I get off on a rabbit trail. But can you rephrase the question again? Because I'll remember it then where I was going.
Well, I'm curious about how long you need to take it. And I guess the idea going through my head is if it's eliminating these pathogens from your system,
right,
and it's somewhat modulated your immune response, but once the pathogens are gone,
right,
do you need to keep taking it?
This is very, very common. And I'll give you 2 situations. The question you asked is a valid question. If it takes out the pathogens, well, then you're good. Pathogens are gone and you're fine, right? But it also is giving you other benefits along the way. That's the CAF and the CAF and the CIF, the activating immune and those factors. It's supporting immune response. It's keeping the pathogens at bay. And, you know, like I said, it gives me tons of energy. That's the one side of it. Now, there's another aspect of this too. And this is, it's kind of a sad story because Sandy was the pastor's wife at the church I went to when I first came to Colorado Springs, and she had a very, very aggressive form of breast cancer. And so she was being treated by the cancer centers up here, and I was working with Dr. Carmen, her oncologist, and we got her on the i26. And the church gave her this huge box of presents. And what it was when she had chemo day and she had a really bad day, she was opening a present to make her feel better. And so what was funny, and by the way, Channel 12 was doing a full story called Faithful Fight on Sandy. Glen, what was his name? The newscast was doing a whole story, at least, and everyone was telling him, number one, you're dealing with a woman who is passed away, very well known in the community, and she has a very aggressive form of breast cancer, and you're doing a news story on her. And he was like, well, we'll see. Well, if not for the i26, she went through it and literally breezed through chemo, breezed through radiation, breezed through a double mastectomy and more chemo. I mean, she really did. She went right through this program and no side effects. I even said to her, Sandy, I said, this is incredible. She goes, yeah, well, my doctor can't believe it. My blood counts are staying high. I'm feeling fantastic. Got great results. That story won several awards for Channel 12. It was quite a program. And then, so of course, that was about a 3-year period. And then the funny part, she never opened any of the gifts. She never had a bad day. And then one day, Dr. Carmen said, don't take that. You don't need that product anymore. She stopped taking it and got really, 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 she was sick in bed for days. So I can't go without this product. It made a huge difference for her. I mean, it was night and day, very, very clear. So anyway, she was cancer pronounced cancer-free. And I was working at Woodland Valley Chapel at the time. And then what happened was a woman came in and she was looking for a job, and he had a job opening. And she said, "Oh yeah, I go to the church over here." I go, "Oh yeah, I know Sandy." I go, "Sandy." I go, "Oh yeah, I know Sandy." She goes, "Yeah." 'Cause I was going to Woodland at the time. And she goes, "Did you hear?" I said, "Did I hear what?" She says, "Her cancer came back." I'm like, "No." She says, "Oh, it came back." So this gal left, and my phone rings, and it's Brian, her husband, calling me up and saying, "Glenn, I have bad news for you. The cancer's returned." And I was like, "Not good." Well, now Sandy, I told her back then, she stopped taking the product. I said, "Sandy, here, let me explain this to you. You have a suppressed immune response. That's why you got cancer in the first place. Now you have a further weakened immune system from the chemo and radiation treatments. You need to stay on this program." She goes, "Oh no, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm cancer-free now." I said, "Sandy, it's not a good idea. You really need to stay on this program to support your immune system." So I'm fine. So the cancer came back. It was very aggressive this time around. She died about 2 years later. So the sad part is that I believe today she'd still be alive had she stayed on the program. So this is a much more severe case. I'm not saying it's treating cancer, but I am saying it does support the immune system through chemotherapy and everything else. And at that point, I mean, she was past chemotherapy. She was past, they removed both breasts, so there's no breast tissue left, but the cells were still there. And they ravaged her body basically and eventually killed her. So I tell people that it is important to stay on the program because I don't have cancer, but I take it every day unless I forget. I take it all the time, and I will never not take it. And like I said, if the company were to go away, I was talking about this earlier because there was some fear they might lose the company due to the FDA regulations. I went and got the patents and figured out how to make the product. I know how to make it now. It's going to take me a couple $1,000s investment in equipment and everything else. I'm a scientist. I can do these things. I know the process. That's why I got the ducks out in the backyard.
So are they making it with duck eggs or with chicken eggs?
You can make it with any kind of egg. Well, you can make it with any kind of egg, period. So I can.
What's it made out of?
What's that?
What's the commercial product made out of?
The commercial product is made from ducks. I mean, from chickens. Chickens.
Okay.
Chickens are readily available. They have to go to a chicken farmer and say, "Here's the deal. You have to do all these procedures this particular way, and it's a very special step." And then they take the eggs and they check everything to make sure it's all there. And then they so.
Now, our group, Glenn, is very interested in food and where it comes from and how it's produced and all these questions. I'm sure you've had a conversation or two with Glenn Schultz over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And that's probably a real good question then. Are these chickens, what are the chickens being fed? How are they being medicated? That kind of thing.
It's basic standard USDA practices for chickens. Now, I believe there's two things. People ask the question, are they free range or are they caged? And I have to tell you, this is very important to understand that if you free range the chicken, the antibody levels are very, very low. Don't know why that is, but they are. So they are caged. That's number one. Number two, they ask, are they on organic feed? And that would be very nice to do so. However, that would raise the price of the product to a level where it wouldn't be affordable for people to buy. So it's not organic food and it's not free range. That is important to understand. It's like, on the one hand, I understand that you're trying to do something and get a certain product. So you have to do it in the way that the best practice for that product. So they're basically taking regular farmers and say, "Hey, you want to try this program out? Follow these rules, and you can get your eggs at a better value, essentially." But it's not like, you see the stories about the chickens, how they're treated and everything else. And I don't know all the details, but I do know they are regulated by the standard USDA guidelines, and that could be almost anything. But the point is that they're not organic feed, and they are not free range. So if I were to do these guys here, I don't think I could cage them up. But the point is that, there'd be some value still, but I might not pasteurize the eggs in this case. That would give me a higher percentage of product otherwise. So kind of a catch-22. And you want to do the best, but you also want to make sure the product is effective. And if you lose the effectiveness by following, it wouldn't be ineffective. If you gave organic food, it wouldn't affect that. It's the free range side that does affect the quantity of the product itself, the actual effectiveness of the product. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's not. I'm sure it's not. I've gotten that question many, many times, and we discussed it way back when in the day, and it was not. You have to understand, this product when it first came to market was $100 a can. It was very expensive. It wasn't selling at $100 a can because who's going to buy its egg? They didn't get what the egg was. The science team recognized the value, and that was the reason why. This was a product with what, 50 million patents, $50 million spent in research and development, and it had over 160 patents on it. It's not the kind of product you normally see in the network marketing industry. It's a very, very high-end product. It was designed to be a nutraceutical or a pharmaceutical, and it was designed to sell over the counter or through different other retail sources. It wasn't until they realized they couldn't move this product very well. They went to network marketing to move the products. They realized the benefit was so dramatic. People's results were so stunning. They said this would sell well by word of mouth. And that's how it got in this industry. Because like I said, there's nothing like this in the industry, nothing even close to it, you know?
Right. And I keep finding that with some of the best nutraceutical products out there really require that word of mouth storytelling to help people understand what they're dealing with and why it's going to serve them. So.
Yeah. I have a comment to make. In our conversations, taking the product is really half of its success, the way I understand it. The other half of this equation is you have to populate with good probiotics. Speak to that, please.
Yes, that's a good point. In fact, there's also an order here that you must understand, okay? Because I've had people take the product, okay, and they have issues. I say issues, it might be gas, it might be bowel movements may change, things of that sort. And I kind of go, well, you know, no one knows what the good microbiome is. We don't really know. So we can't say, okay, look at your okay, your microbiome has this. We can't treat it that way. You have to say, okay, let's kind of get out the bad stuff first and then add the good bacteria. Now, Dr. Greenblatt and I had a long discussion about this one time. As he said, there's no cross-reactivity between good pathogens and bad pathogens. Good pathogens, I should say. Good bacteria and pathogen. There's no cross-reactivity. But as a scientist, I know that they have the same cell walls. They look the same. They have certain features that are specific to each bacteria. So there's going to be cross-reactivity. There has to be cross-reactivity between good bacteria in your GI tract. So essentially, i26 can take out some of your good bacteria. Let's be honest about that. It's going to have some cross-reactivity. It's going to target certain pathogens, but it's going to cross-react with some too. So I'll tell people, start with the i26 and then add the probiotics afterwards, because you have to you get better results with them together than alone. And I've seen across the board. And then again, the question is, well, what probiotics do I use? And there's a lot out there, right? And I have different products I've used. I get better results than other products. So I always tell people to get the best one you can find and go with that and see how it works. But if you're having problems with gas, particularly, then I recommend, you know, changing probiotics and trying that out, and then maybe modifying the dose a little bit. Yeah, but that's a really good point, though. Yeah, because you are taking out, you're taking, say, a volume of good and bad bacteria, and you're kind of taking the levels down a bit, and now GI function is going to function differently until you add back good pathogens, and that's going to be key.
So what I've learned too is you can get a lot of good probiotics out of food.
Yeah, oh yeah.
What foods would you eat for a good probiotics?
I eat the same foods pretty much. I eat lots of kimchi. I make it myself here. I eat lots of yogurt. What other foods I eat that have bacteria in it? Beer has bacteria in it, by the way, but I don't drink beer anymore. but there's bacteria essentially in there, but it's mostly yeast. Those are my two main ones, and I take a probiotic on top of that too. See, because there are days I'm just like, I'm not into kimchi, but I have kimchi every Sunday at my church. I go to a Korean church, so we have kimchi every Sunday. And so it's always there. And that's a great source of bacteria. And depending how long you run it for, I mean, you can get different variations of the bacteria profiles. Get it more acidic or not, less acidic, stuff like that. So, yeah, but like I said, I do take a probiotic every day with my supplements. So I'm getting a mix of probiotics from outside environment, but also otherwise, yeah.
So you're taking them both at the same time as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, you know, it's interesting to me because I listen all the time to these discussions about the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, and I agree with you 100% that we don't have a clear picture of what the perfect microbiome looks like.
Right.
What I saw often in microbial ecology is that it's not an issue of, is this a good bug or a bad bug? It's an issue of, when is this a good bug and when is this a bad bug? Because
timing is everything.
Right.
You know,
and so
some of the research coming out in probiotics is, I mean, I think it was called, what year it was? A couple of years ago, it was called the Year of the Microbiome, where it was one of the hottest topics in science. And now you're hearing much less about microbiome type stuff, because we're trying to work the details out, like what's this stuff, what's that stuff. But one of the ones that really caught my eye was this one, was that children who take antibiotics, okay, so we know that kills some of the microbiome, we find that later in life they have a propensity towards obesity. And the question is, where'd that one come from? So those are the kind of things we ask. Well, that's curious. Now we have to figure out why is the case. We make the hypothesis, and now let's test the hypothesis, figure out what it is. And so there have been some suggestions that certain bacteria predispose a person to obesity. Now, that was about, I remember reading that a couple of years ago. And now I'm looking back at what I'm doing with my diet and realize, I have a different picture altogether about obesity that's completely different from what they were saying. And it doesn't matter what's in the microbiome, it matters what you're eating, and it matters what the ratios are of fat, protein, and carbohydrate. That's more important to me. So that's a whole different topic. Yeah.
Right. I think it also, I looked at plant microbiomes, and every plant has a very complex microbiome. And again, the way the plants are grown make a big difference as to how natural and balanced that microbiome is.
Right.
But we used to find microbes in the guts of wildlife that matched the microbes of the native plants they were eating. And it just kind of planted the seed in my brain here that that our microbiome is really kind of the interface between ourselves and our diet. And it's reflecting what you eat, and we're inoculating ourselves every time we eat. And so if you inoculate yourself with good food and you haven't cooked it to extinction of the microbiome, then you're constantly exposing yourself to new microbes.
There was a speaker I heard, I'm not sure, I was at the Low Carb Breckenridge Conference last summer in Breckenridge, and I think it was there was a speaker that spoke about, or it might have been a convention, I'm not sure which. They talked about yields from crop. I'm sure Glen would know this really well, being a farmer, and the idea of having essentially a healthy microbiome in the soil, so they get all the nutrients, and essentially that whole process was more effective than using antibiotics, or what do you call them? Pesticides to kill the weeds and everything else. It was a much more organic and natural way of farming, essentially, and getting better yield overall and better health down the line. And I can't remember now if it was from the convention or if it was from Breckenridge. They all happened about the same time last summer. So
okay,
I wish I could find that talk. And looking back, that's powerful stuff, because we don't farm that way much. Well, you guys, I know my deal Glen is, but people don't farm that way very much anymore. The small farms are doing this kind of stuff and seeing the benefits, but the big farms that we get most of our food from, they're not doing that at all. It's unfortunate. So,
and actually, there's an interesting revolution there going on, because I do have frequent conversations with farmers, big and small. And you're right, the system is easier to manage small. It's easier to do very integrated and ecologically diverse small farming on small acreage. But some of these big farmers are really, the light bulbs are on, and they're really doing the about face and in the process of transitioning. And we're going to see some really exciting things happening with food in the next 10 years.
That's good to hear. Yeah, that really is. It's good news. So, good stuff.
Okay, well, Glen, I am so glad you came out and joined us today. Is there anything else you want to let people know, or feel like maybe we missed that are important for people to understand the product with?
I didn't cover certain areas, and there's one area I do want to cover just briefly, touch upon. And it's the area of mental health. You're like, what?
Oh, good.
and let me I call this, no, not saying. So what it is, there's a thing going on. There's the immune system over here, there's the endocrine system over here, and then there's the brain. And people don't realize that these three things all work together. And when you normalize the immune system, you normalize hormonal function, you normalize the brain. And there are a lot of people that have issues these days with depression. You see a lot of people taking, antidepressive type drugs, SSRIs, things of that sort. And I've seen over and over and over again the benefits of this product for people that are suffering from issues with neurological type stuff. And it's not just depression, it's the gamut, okay? What I have noticed, and it's something that I don't think it's on the label anymore, but I used to say, it promotes a feeling of well-being. That was the way they phrased it. And I'll never forget that. It promotes a feeling of well-being. But I have seen so many situations. I'm going to tell you two fun stories. One was an artist who lived in Sausalito, and he came into my office one morning. I said, here, try this. And I made up a shake. It was a triple dose. Try this up. And he drinks the thing, and he lays back on my couch, and he goes, wow, I feel great. This is within about maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Just does it like that. And I was like, wow, I never noticed it works that quickly. I was doing a health fair at the Santa Rita jail in Pleasanton. and lots of police officers, a lot of high-stress people, high-stress job in a prison. And I remember I had 3 police officers off to the side. It was 2 men and a woman officer. And I was doing 3-ounce samples of the complete sport, so a chocolate shake, and I was passing them out. And these 3 had some, they were talking. And the woman turns around and says to me, how fast does this product work? And I went, well, it can take between minutes to like months to see a result. She goes, I feel like a wave of calm just spread down my whole body. And I was like, really? She says, oh yeah, like a wave, just like, and I feel just relaxed and calm. I'm like, wow. I was doing a health fair at Highland Hospital, and I'll never forget this. Is a very large, heavy-set nurse was kind of tumbling over the overpass like thing in the hospital, and I was right there by the end. And she had one of those things and left and the other thing. And at the end of the day, I was packing these up. She came over to me. She said, oh my gosh, I got to talk to you. I was getting everything put away. And she goes, what? I says, well, you know, I saw this morning. I had my shake this morning. I go, yeah. I says, well, and at the time I saw her, she was sweating. I thought because she was running a little bit, it's a little bit late. Well, she has really severe hot flashes. And she told me, she goes, you know, I haven't had a hot flash the whole day. I'm like going, it does that for people too. So, and the last one was the funniest one of all, because there was a kid I was coaching. His name was Ronaldo Bolentini. Very Italian name, very Italian family. His dad, Alex, was a carpenter, an Italian carpenter, just exquisite carpenter up in Reno, Nevada. And his son Ronaldo was kind of like, you know, his dad was really big on bike racing. They knew Cipollini and everything else, and big on bike. And Ronaldo was kind of like, yeah, I'm okay, you know, not really into bike racing. But his dad was pushing him, you could tell. But I was coaching Ronaldo. And Ronaldo would sit in the middle of the field, would never do anything, just sit in the field. Go to the front, you'd sit in the field. So it was Lighthouse Criterium in I'll never forget this. It's such a vivid impression with his dad. And I just finished my race, and he's going to do the next race, the Pro 1-2 race. And I have it's a thing about this big. It's a shake, 3 triple serving chocolate with milk, not something pre-race, post-race. And it's for me, right? So Ronaldo goes, what's that? I go, it's my post-race drink. He goes, can I taste it? I go, sure. He takes it and he chugs the whole thing. And I'm thinking, bad because it's got milk in it. It's not a pre-race drink, and he just drank my drink, and that's the one I got. So I was a little bit upset, but he goes off and finishes the warm-up. 10 minutes later, he starts the race, and it has a long hill and a very stiff headwind, right? Up the hill, he's towing the field up the hill and down the whole straightaway with the whole pack like a wave behind him, like a wake, all in line behind him. And he's towing the field down the straightaway. I'm like going, what? And next lap, up the hill and down the street into the headwind. He's towing the field down the hill. About the 3rd time, his dad goes, what's up with Ronaldo? I go, I have no idea. He's just towing the Pro 1-2 field, lap after lap after lap. I'm kind of going like, he's never done that before, ever. So he gets 4th or 5th place. I was kind of shocked. And after towing the field around, and he comes over, he goes, what was in that drink? I go, you mean my recovery drink that you drank? He goes, yeah. He says, I felt so strong. I go, well, it showed. You were towing the field. I'm taking pictures. Ronaldo towing the field to Pro 1-2. I'm like, just, that's how fast it works, and that's what it does. It changes the mental state of people. It changes the hormonal type, and the one woman with hot flashes. It changes the way you feel as far as stress levels. I mean, it does amazing things. And that's why it's important people try this product and realize the benefits. My friend Bob Aguilar was a painter, and Bob had hurt his back really badly. And he said, well, will it help my back? Well, it should help your back, help some of the inflammation. Got on the program. And after about maybe 3 or 4 weeks, he wasn't seeing a benefit of his back. I was like, okay, well, you know, to stay on the program, maybe double the dose. But his wife, Jennifer, came to me and said to me, she goes, whatever you do not let him stop taking that product. I'm like, why? She goes, oh my gosh, he's the best husband ever now. He's so nice. He's so kind to me. I mean, everything's changed. I'm like, really? He says, but his back, he goes, I don't know about his back, but he's just a great husband now. I'm like going, don't let him get off that product. Okay, I won't. Well, eventually his back problems resolved. He fell off the ladder some time ago and hurt his back. And his back problems got better, but his wife was happy as can be. So you never know what it's going to do down the road. It might be something over here or something other, but it does have a benefit, and maybe not what you expect sometimes. So that's kind of that little fun story about this product.
Okay, and you triggered an issue that I've been talking about with one of our nurse practitioners and some of the people at the Wellness Center that have joined us. Mm-hmm. I guess the state of New Mexico has really launched an effort because we are 15th in the nation for opioid addiction.
Oh, yes.
Distinguishing. And so by September, these health practitioners really need to start weaning people off their medications, their opioid type medications. Mm-hmm. And so the group is trying to come up with very specific protocols
Right.
for helping people find alternatives and
Yes.
authentically relieve that pain without medication.
Yes.
Do you see I26 fitting in here? And if you were to develop a protocol or test a protocol, what would your hunch be that somebody should take?
Yeah, well, we're on a whole new topic right now. You understand, right?
Right. and I'm giving it to you here in the last 5 minutes. So.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Let me kind of structure this thing a little bit first, and I have to give you a hypothesis I have, which I believe will come to the forefront over time. It's not quite out there yet, and the hypothesis is very, very simple: is that what we do on our normal diet dramatically affects our addictions, whether it be nicotine, cocaine, opiates, sex, drugs, you name it, because of what we do on our diet. And let me explain how this works. And I'm going to run it backwards. You know, when a person has an opiate overdose, they give us something. They give a little drug called Norcan, which is really a drug. The actual name is called naloxone, and naloxone blocks the dopamine receptor. So what that means is that if the drug you're using binds to dopamine, and naloxone blocks the receptor, then the opiate can't have an effect. That's why it works so well as it does. So if you test other products, whether it be nicotine or you test different drugs, and you give naloxone, they get no effect, we know it's blocking the receptor, and that drug or that product works through that receptor. So the trick is that if you give people that have nicotine addictions naloxone, the nicotine has no effectiveness. You give opiates or heroin, no effectiveness, okay? If you give sugar and alcohol, no effectiveness. Sugar and alcohol, sugar is a 6-carbon, alcohol is a 3-carbon sugar. They work the same pathway. We have a diet extremely high in sugar and alcohol, high sugar products. Those high sugar products stimulate that dopamine receptor again and again and again, leading to greater stimulation. Let's add opiates. Let's add something else, essentially promoting addictions. So the high sugar environment we live in and the high sugars we eat promotes addiction. That's my philosophy. Now, there's a book I met a gal by the name of Catherine DeMaison some years ago. She wrote the book, Potatoes Not Prozac. And the philosophy was get ourselves from simple carbohydrates and move ourselves all the way to complex carbohydrates. Makes a lot of sense, okay? So getting off sugars and going the other direction. In fact, she ran a DUI clinic in San Mateo County near San Francisco, and she had about a 95% success rate, extremely high for DUI clinics. But if you look at most DUI clinics, there's candy everywhere because candy, sugar, is the substitute for alcohol. So they eat candy, they don't deal with the problem, but you move them from simple sugars over to more complex carbohydrates, take away the addiction. So that's the backstory. The front story is that the whole idea of the diet I'm on, this is ketosis type diet, I've been on for 1.5 years now, is there's no sugar. There's no carbohydrates or very low carbohydrates. Nothing to stimulate the receptor, and everything else has normalized as a result. So what I would say is that for these people that are working with addictions is, number one, you've got to get them on a lower carbohydrate diet, something more towards ketosis or something like a low carb diet. Get them off sugar altogether, no more sugar, because that's going to tone down the receptors so the opiate problem is less pronounced. And then since the I26 itself has neurological benefit, it kind of stimulates some of the hormones apparently and some of the neurological conditions, it makes the patient feel better without going to the opiates for that wellness effect essentially. So in conjunction with a keto type diet or a low carb diet, adding the I26 will have a benefit as far as the neurological side of things, help to normalize things. So that's my take on it. I haven't put a program together, but I would just say I'd move towards low carb, get into more complex carbohydrates, normalizing diet that way, and then add the I26 to promote the whole endocrine system, immune system, and neurological side of things. Yeah, definitely.
And would you include the 90 for life with all that?
Oh, yeah, of course. That's almost like, it's just such in a sense, it's like, it's a given, of course they would.
Right.
I mean, for example, on my diet, on my keto diet, I eat so very simple foods now. My foods are basically salads and a protein. That's what it really is. Like last day, some nights it's chicken, some nights it's beef. I just move a protein around and I have a salad. And I might have that once a day. That's my meal for the whole day. I don't eat maybe once or twice a day because I'm never hungry anymore with this diet. And, except when I'm racing, I get hungry. But other than that, I mean, everything's normalized now and much different. So I have to be supplementing my food because I'm not getting I eat a more wide variety of food. I'm getting more nutrients in. I'm getting less nutrients. So I always make sure I supplement. That's critically important for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So no sugar, 90 for life, and I26.
Yes.
Probably in the other order is the way you'd go, or they're both.
Well, I always lead with I26. And then, of course, what happens, what I like is that, a lot of people, let's say they take vitamin C. They go, I take my vitamin C because I know it's good for me. But they don't necessarily experience a benefit from taking vitamin C. They might get fewer colds, perhaps, but they don't really experience, well, I feel great. But the I26, they feel better. Or even if I had people call me up years later and say, I take this product I26 and do you still sell it? I go, of course I do. It says, I stopped taking, I just don't feel the same anymore. And they come back, oh yeah, I feel great. Those are my customers that never go away because they had them many years ago in San Francisco and they got off the program and then they kind of lost track of me and they lost the product and then they realized they don't feel good anymore. They contact me somehow through Google or whatever it may or Facebook. I get a phone call or an email and it's like, oh yeah, I got that product still. So their customers that come back to me, they know it works and the stuff does work and that's really important. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Glenn, do you have anything else?
I think I've covered a lot of bases. I've covered a lot of stuff, but it's great. Thanks for the opportunity.
This is a fantastic call, really.
Oh.
I so appreciate you coming out and joining us and
I'm
sharing
always
information.
I'm always blown away by your knowledge, and thank you for joining us. We learned some things. That blocker for opiates. Just a kind of a follow-up question. You're saying it'll block nicotine, it'll block alcohol, so you could drink alcohol and not get drunk? Is that what I'm kind of?
That's true. Wow. Yeah, well, actually, one affects blood sugar, but it's the addictive side of it. You know how alcohol has addiction side to it?
Okay.
Addiction side. It won't block the effectiveness. I mean, you'll still get drunk, but you won't have that I have to have it again type thing. It becomes addictive. That includes everything. Sex. I mean, the dopamine receptor is like our hey, stimulate that receptor, we feel better. That's, will it be sex? It could be drugs, rock and roll. No, I mean, sex and drugs. I mean, alcohol, opiates, morphine, cocaine, all those drugs works the dopamine receptor for the addiction side. Block the receptor, the addiction goes away. And that's important for sugar too, because I was at Starbucks the other day. I was coming back I was up in Fort Collins at a race, stopped at Starbucks late at night, and started talking, I don't know, got in this conversation about keto diet. I was saying how all this stuff here in the Starbucks tray I used to crave this stuff, all these sweets and everything else, and cookies and buns and biscuits and things and donuts. I'm like, I look at them and I go, not even interested at all. Because I used to have a severe sugar craving. I was an athlete, I could do that, I could eat a lot because I'm an athlete, but now I have no craving for sugar anymore, which is amazing because I used to live on those foods. That was my main, was carbohydrates, pasta and potatoes, as an athlete. 70% carbohydrate, not anymore.
Well, they recommend that for so many athletes.
That's right. That was the thing.
You need those carbs. You need to carb up so you can
carb loading, right?
Perform.
Doesn't work that way. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming out. And
you're welcome. My pleasure.
I enjoyed the conversation. We're going to share this with a lot of people.
Please do. Yes. And any questions, just let me know. So I'm sure I'll get them from Glenn. Any questions?
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. I'm going to